Today's daf is sponsored by Shmuley and Miriam Fuchs, for Ephraim ben Shifra. So yesterday we tried to rush through to the end of this multi-part machlokas about when the tekufa, when the season is supposed to fall. What's the last day that it can be in the how much of the old season can be in Tishrei or in Nisan for us to call a leap year? So what we'll do is, for about quick 10 minutes, we're going to zip through again the daf that we did yesterday. We're going to start again from the very bottom of Yud Beis and Mud Beis, but I'm going to do it real fast. Because we're going to have the chart. So with the chart, it'll be much simpler. And we're going to start with this. We don't have to go through all the seasons or any of the, it's much simpler to understand this time. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Rabbi Yosef Shmuel, Ein ma'avrin es hashana elim kin ha'isa tekufa chaser rubo shel chodesh, v'kam rubo shel chodesh, shisha asar yom divrei Rabbi Yehuda. This is Shmuel's explanation. Shmuel presents the argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda's version, he says that we're going to, if the last day of the tekufa of the summer falls out on the 16th of Tishrei, so then we're going to have to then we don't need to have a new leap year. That's the last day that we can have it. Right. And Rabbi Yossi holds Rabbi Yossi Omer Echad ve'esrim Yom, and Rabbi Yossi holds on the 21st day. Okay, so either the 16th day or the 21st day. What's the difference? Shnehem mikra echad darshu. They're both just interpreting the same pasuk differently. Chag Asif tekufas hashana. That the pasuk that says the holiday of the gathering, the day of the gathering, is when the season has to have the new season. Mar savar kulei b'chag ba'inan b'tkufa chadasha. Mar savar mikzas chag ba'inan b'tkufa chadasha. One says that you can have to have the whole, as we had this yesterday, right? You have to have the whole chol hamoed in the new season. So therefore the 16th starts, and the other said only one day of Chol Moed is all we need in the new season, and that's all that we need. So therefore, let me just get the magnet back up there. Good. Okay. So therefore, my kasavri. So what are they holding about whether the season begins or ends on that day? Ikasavar Yom Tekufa Gomer, if they were both holding that that day of the season is the last day of the previous season, Balav Hachinami lo. So then that would still not be sufficient, because if the 16th was the last day of the previous season, then the 16th would be lacking according to Rabbi Yehuda, and the 21st would be in the previous season according to Rabbi Yossi. That would not be sufficient, right? We need to be able to have the entire season. Therefore, it must be. So therefore, Laman Damar Kuli Chag Ika, Velo Laman Damar Miktas Chag Ika. We're not going to have enough, according to the opinion that holds that you need all of the days. And we're not going to have enough of according to the opinion that says we need one of the days of Chol Moed, because that day of the season is going to fall out on that day that you need it to be the new season. So if that was going to be the last day of the previous season, it would be too late. So therefore, we're going to say that they're both holding that this day, the 16th, is the beginning of the new season. Okay, and that's my chart here, right? So this is the dispute. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, one says the 16th, one says the 21st. They both hold that this day is the beginning of the new season. Hence, we do not need to add an extra month under those circumstances. And I'm going to post this on the WhatsApp chat. Meisvei. Now we're going to ask the following question. Yom Tekufa Gomer, Div Rabbi Yehuda. According to this brisa, we're going to bring this first brisa. This brisa is going to have an argument between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that the day of the season is the day of the season is the last day of the previous season. Rabbi Yossi Amar Yom Tekufa Maskil, it's the beginning of the next season. So therefore, you see that we don't know what day they're holding according to this brisa, but they do argue whether it's the end or the beginning. Well, this is the issue, because Rabbi Yehuda over here holds that it needs to be the end, and over here Rabbi Yehuda held it needs to be the beginning. That's disagreement and problem number one, according to understanding Rabbi Yehuda, right? We're going to have a difference of viewpoint over there, whether it represents the beginning or the end. Second of all, the Ode Tanya, we're going to have another brisa. This brisa is going to have 5 more opinions. Okay, so we're going to get ready for that. And even in the last opinion, there's going to be 2 different ways to understand it. So 5 more opinions. And this is why we got stuck yesterday. Tanya, we learned a brisa. So the most of the month, if most of the month has passed, so that means that we're at the 16th already. So then, Kamaruba Shochodesh, how much is most of the month? Shisha Sar Yom. That's going to be the 16th. That's what the Tanna Kama holds. Now, we're just going to point out that the similarity here is the 16th beginning, So that's going to be the same opinion as what Rabbi Yehuda held in the previous, in Shmuel's explanation. So the Tanakama actually looks like Rabbi Yehuda. But the Rabbi Yehuda that we're going to quote in this brisa doesn't work according to Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda says, Shtei yodos b'chodesh, it has to be 2/3 of the way through the month. V'kama shtei yodos, how much is that? Chaf yom. It's 20 days. So Rabbi Yehuda is going to say that you have to be the 20th. Now, the 20th, why the 20th? Because he's going to hold that Yom Tekufa Gomer, that this 20th is the last day of the previous season. And if the 20th is the last day of the previous season, then the 21st becomes the first day of the next season, which means he only needs one day of Chol Moed in the new season. But he also holds, right? So we're going to say that he holds that the last day that you can have the season, the end of the season can fall out on is the 20th, but he's going to hold, now he's holding that it's the end, right? That 20th is the last day of the previous season. So that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. This shows a contradiction on Rabbi Yehuda on 2 points, right? Both the fact that he holds the end, when we said at the beginning, and also the fact that he now is holding that the Kufa can be on the 20th, where before he said the 16th. That's our double question on Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, and Rabbi Yossi says, Mechashvin Shisha Lifnei Pesach. Rabbi Yossi is going to say that we're going to calculate 16 days into Nisan, okay, into the month where Pesach falls out on. So that means, and this we did the math yesterday, if the 16th day of the winter comes into Nisan, then we're going to wind up with 14 days, 59, which is 132, plus another 29 days of Elul, 161, which will bring us into the 21st of Tishrei, according to Rabbi Yossi. Now, that's not a problem, because that's the same thing that Rabbi Yossi held before, right? Rabbi Yossi before said the 21st. Only for some reason in this brisa, we start from Pesach, okay? But it's the same opinion, right? And he also holds that the 21st winds up becoming the beginning of the next season, and that's fine. Now, but he says, Ma'avrin Shisha Sar Lifnei Achag, if we're in the 16th day of if the season falls 16 days into Tishrei, then we're not going to, by contrast. Now, the truth of the matter is that according to him, right, the new season could start the 16th, the 17th, the 18th, the 19th, the 20th, as long as it falls on the 21st. So why does he just say the 16th? Because we're going to see the Gemara later on, he's just going to say for parallel purposes. Because if it falls on the 16th of Nisan, then there's not going to be enough days, because it's going to wind up falling out on the 21st of Tishrei. Right? Does that make sense? But if it is the 16th, the 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, the truth is that all of those days would not be sufficient for us to add an extra month if that was to occur in Tishrei. We're going to see that. We're going to explain that later on, but I'm explaining it now so we can move fast through it later. And Rabbi Shimon's the next opinion. Rabbi Shimon says, Av Shisha Sar Lifnei Achag Ma'avrin. He holds that even if it is 16th day, right? 16 days we add on a month, right? Which means that he requires that the Yom Tekufa fall on the 15th, which is a new opinion, right? So we're going to see what he's holding over there. Maybe the 15th is the end, so that makes some good sense, right? If the 15th is the end, so then the 16th is the beginning of the next season. So that's his opinion. And the others are going to say miuto, that it has to fall out, the Tekufa has to fall out in less than half the month. We don't say which month. Less than half. Right? Miuto. Less than half. The kama miuto, how much is less than half of a month? Arba asar yom, it's 14 days. So we're going to explain that later on, so we'll hold on to that. But Kasha, we're just going to point out that the whole point of us bringing this was to point out this contradiction between Rabbi Yehuda and this Rabbi Yehuda, and we're going to leave that as a contradiction.
So something that's not clear.
Yes.
From back, I guess the last time.
Mm-hmm.
We tried to figure out whether to add, when to add a man, whether to add it. But you mentioned in the Daf before that if there was a Magefa.
Yes, then we're not going to.
So
what they do, they ignore these rest of these signs.
So my question is that now we know that, the seasons
or they're already set.
So what if there is a plague, chas v'shalom, in
So that's correct. So we're not going to ever change it. Why? Because we don't have a Sanhedrin, or we don't have a beis din that can establish the months, or that we don't have a beis din of Mumchin who could establish this. And the Chachamim knew that. So what they did was they sat down and they established they set all of the leap years in advance for all time. So we don't have the power to change and decide not to make it a leap year. So therefore, for us, it's too late. It's done.
so
Right.
no matter what, no
So
matter
that's correct.
plague
This
or not.
this is all theoretical, academic, as they say, for our purposes. Amar Mar. So now let's go through these again. This time we're going to explain them, but we'll go fast because we already did. Rav Yehuda Omer Shtei Yodos B'Chodesh. It's 2/3 of the month, which is Esrim Yom, which is 20 days. Rabbi Yossi Omer Mechashvin Shisha Asar Yom Lifnei Pesach Me'avrin. So it's going to be 16 days before the 16th of Nisan, right? As that's fall before the 16th of Nisan. Then we're going to have an extra day. So Hainu Rabbi Yehuda. So then that is the exact same opinion as Rabbi Yehuda. If Rabbi Yossi is saying that it has to fall out on the 21st, right? We said that this means that this is the 21st of Tishrei. And Rabbi Yehuda also says the 20th of Tishrei. Only what's the difference between them? Yom Tekufa Gomer, Yom Tekufa Maskil Ikabeinahu. The difference is this column. One says that it has to fall out on the 20th because that's the end of the previous season. So the 21st is the first day of the next season. And the other says the last season can end on the 21st because they hold that that day is the beginning of the next season. So they both agree on this point, which day the new season has to begin, but they disagree on which day can be the end day of the season because they disagree about whether that day is the end of the previous season or the beginning of the next season. Okay. Amar Mar says Shisha Lifnei Achag in Ma'avrin. So he says, what about this opinion that he says 16 days? We're not going to, according to El Rabbi Yossi, Yom Shisha Sar Lifnei Achag Hu Delo Hashiv Sar V'Tim Nasar Ma'avrin. We said that this was the problem with Rabbi Yossi's opinion. He says that if it falls out, if the Yom Tekufa falls on the 16th, then we don't need an extra month. Yeah, but according to you, Rabbi Yossi, shouldn't need an extra month even if it falls on the 17th or on the 18th. Remember, he says that you have all the way up until the 20th or the 21st before you have to worry about a leap year. So he says, Vamar Shisha Sofnei Pesach. In B'tzir Lo. I don't need anything unless I wind up getting to the 21st. So the answer is Edi Lo. Edi v'Edi Ein Ma'avrin. You're right. It doesn't make a difference. You're not going to add an extra month, 16th, 17th, 18th, any of those days. It's just for parallel comparison that he's using the number 16. Whereas on the 16th of Nisan, if the season fell on the 16th of Nisan, you would need to add an extra month because that would come out to the 21st of Tishrei. If it fell on the 16th of Tishrei, by contrast, you would not need to because you have plenty of time, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th, that you would still have available to have some of Chol Moed in the new season. Okay, so that's how he says. Rabbi Shimon says, Af Shisha Asar Lifnei Achag Ma'avrin. So he says even the 16th, right? So he says, Rabbi Shimon says even the 16th, right? We are going to add an extra day, which means the 15th is the last day that you don't need to add an extra month. So Hainu Tanakama, that's the same as this opinion, as the first opinion again, where he says the 16th has to be the beginning of the new season, and he also says the 16th has to be the beginning of the new season. So the answer is Ika Beinayu. The difference between them is Yom Tekufa Maschil, Yom Tekufa Gomer, V'lo Masaimi. The difference again between them is one says that the 16th can be the new season because that's the beginning of the new season, and one says it has to be on the 15th because that's the end of the previous season. So therefore, the next day afterwards would be the beginning of the new season. Okay, now we get into the Acheir's opinion. Two different explanations. Miuto, it has to be less. The new season has to fall out less than halfway through the month. The Kama Miuto, how much is less than halfway through the month? Arba Sar is 14 days. So Micro Savri, what is the rationale behind this? Ika Savri Yom Tekufa Gomer. So if you're going to tell me that the Yom Tekufa is the last day of the previous month, V'kulei Chag Ba'inon, and so maybe he's of the opinion that you need all of the days of Chol HaMoed, Ha'ika. So he says, well, you're still going to wind up having that fall out. So Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak says, Achirim b'tkufas Nisan kaimi. We're not talking about Tishrei at all. According to Achirim, we're talking about, this is the first viewpoint, which is Rav Shmuel's viewpoint. We're talking about 14 days. The tekufa of the winter time has to fall out in the first 14 days of Nisan. Why? Dichsiv, completely separate than anything else. Up to this point, we said the new season has to begin during Chol Moed. Nothing to do with that. It has to do with this. Shmoras HaChodesh HaAviv. You have to guard the spring season. Shemora Aviv shel tekufa shehei b'chodesh Nisan. You have to make sure that the spring season, falls out in the month of Nisan. So, and the month of Nisan, Rashi explains, during the new portion of the month of Nisan, the part of the month where the moon is getting larger, and that is the first 14 days. V'liabre le'adar. Okay, well, wait a second. If that's the case, then even if it's going to fall on the 15th, you don't need to add an extra month. Why? Because there's a second solution. All you need to do is add one more day to Adar, and by doing that, you push the entire month of Nisan forward one day, and the 15th becomes the 14th, and you've solved that problem.
But did we see we're not allowed to do that?
You couldn't do that by Tishrei. Good question. You couldn't do it by Tishrei, but by Nisan, we have more flexibility because we can always correct the problem of Rosh Hashanah falling out on the Sunday, Wednesday, or Friday during the subsequent 6 months. We've got plenty of time to fix that problem. The issues of different days, of different weekdays not falling out on Pesach are less of a problem. So therefore, we can always fix it. So Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Tana milmala lemata kechoshev. You're right. The Tana is saying that it's during the last 14 days of the month, or the last 15 days of the month, it can't fall out. V'hachi kamer. This means ad miyuto me'avrin. Until we get till the 14th, we're going to add an extra month. The kama miyuto until we get down to the 14th day. So therefore, essentially, it's the same thing. Just that now we're saying instead of the 14th is the last day of the season, we're saying the 15th, but we started from the end of the month and we worked our way backwards. So that way, even if it were to fall out on the 15th, right? So then we could add an extra month and we could add an extra day and that would solve that problem. But this way we're saying all the way up until the 15th, all the way up until we get to the 15th, that is when we're going to have to add an extra month. But we're not going to have an extra month. Once we get down to the 15th, once we get to the 15th, then the season is arriving too late, then we're going to have to add an extra month. That's Shmuel's opinion. Ravina says, Liolam achirim b'tishrei kaimi. Ravina say that really we're talking about, the achirim are talking about Tishrei. It has to fall in the first 14 days of Tishrei. The kasavri achirim, now what's the achirim's reason? Nobody said that the season has to come out that early. Some people says the 15th. Some people said the 16th. Why the 14th? Because he holds kulei chag ba'inon. The Yom Tov Rishon chag ha'asif ksiv. So Yom Tov Rishon. He says, no, he's the one, he has a different viewpoint. He says that you need the entire sukkahs, including the 15th to fall out in the new season. Yeah, but doesn't it say, it says chag ha'asif ksiv. The pasuk says it has to be the holiday during the day that you're gathering. You can't gather anything on Yom Tov. So the answer is Chag HaBab Bizman HaSifa. It is the holiday that falls during the harvest season. That's what Chag HaAsif means. Therefore, he requires, unlike everybody else, an extra day so that you have the season start on the 15th so that the whole of Sukkot is in. So, okay, that was a quick run through of yesterday's page. You can play it on half speed, and I'm going to supply this chart so anybody who wants to review it.
Watch on YouTube, we're going to do it times 2.
That's right. Well, you do it times half.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's go on to the new Gemara where we get back to being reasonable. It's more straightforward. Smichas zikanim. The next thing in the Mishnah said that we are going to lean on the animal. Okay, this is when we're talking about parha elam davar. There's a bull that if the elders taught the wrong halacha and people followed it, so they had to bring a special bull offering. Okay, and so now the zikanim, the elders, are going to be leaning on it.
And if they didn't have any bulls, then we're going to do the second.
Then they better go find a bull. If you're out of bulls, then cows are extinct, and that's a bad sign. It's a much worse thing. Okay, Tana Rabbanan, the samchu that they lean ziknei the elders, yochel ziknei ashuk. Now, who are these elders? Could be any two rabbis from the street. So Talmud Lomar Eda, therefore it says ziknei Eda. It has to be the Eda. The Eda means they're an official appointed based in. I Eda yochel ktane. So if that is ktani Eda, if that's the case, then maybe it could be the small Sanhedrin of 23, 2 members of the small Sanhedrin. Talmud Lomar Ha Eda. There it says the congregation. This is the Sanhedrin. So it's the full Sanhedrin, 2 members of the Sanhedrin of 71. Miyuchad and Shebeidah.
When there's more than one Sanhedrin?
Sorry?
Why is it called the Sanhedrin? Isn't there more than one Sanhedrin?
There's only one the Sanhedrin. There's many smaller Sanhedrins, the 23 judge ones, and that's the small Sanhedrin. And then there's only one Sanhedrin of 71. That's why they call it, that is the one. V'kama hein, so how many of these elders do you need in order to perform this service? V'samchu, they lean, shnayim, ziknei, the elders, Shnaim, that's also 2. Vein based in Shakul can't have an even number. Most even Alei Mordechai, we're going to add one more. Hare Kan Chamisha, that makes 5 elders. Tivrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's what Rabbi Yehuda says. Rabbi Shimon says Ziknei is Shnaim is 2. Vein based in Shakul, most even Alei Mordechai, that's all you need. Can't have more than 2. Can't have an even based in. We're going to add one more. Hare Kan Shosha, which makes 3. Question on Rabbi Shimon is Haksiv V'Samchu. What does he do with that phrase in the pasuk that says V'Samchu and they leaned, which Rabbi Yehuda used to learn 2 more elders? So he says Haumi Baile Legufei. He says that's to tell you that they have to lean on it, right? Without that word, you don't know what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to put their hands on it. Doesn't mean to lean on it.
And they're not judging anything. What do they
Oh, great question. So was listening to Rabbi Rosner's Daf Yomi on this and had that question, and he makes a comment about the purpose of Sanhedrin. He says that it comes from a shiur of Rav Soloveitchik used to give these Rav Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik used to give these shiurim on his father's yurtzeit, and one of the topics that he says there's 2 different actions that a basic perform, much like 2 different actions that we talked about when we had talked about a shtar, right? A shtar could be a mere testimony to an event, or the shtar could actually be the document that makes the transaction. A beis din could either be a court where they're listening to a case and they're adjudicating the matter, or they have a function of performing an actual service. We're going to see, for example, what about if you've got what makes a Sanhedrin required for Egel Arufa, or to extend the city walls of Yerushalayim. There's nothing to judge here, right? It's just a matter of a beis din was required as a construct, as a halachic entity that represents the people that can then perform this action. So that's what that comes from Yosef Ber Soloveitchik's chiddush on his part. Now, for Rabbi Yehuda legufei lo tzarich. So Rabbi Yehuda says, I don't need to talk about I don't need a pasuk to tell me that they're supposed to lean their hands on. Dim kain delo asi v'samchu lidrasha, because if you didn't have that word, you could leave that word out. Lichtov, the pasuk could just write Ziknei ha'eda yedeim al rosh hapar. The Ziknei, the elders of the congregation, put their hands on the bull. That would be what they're doing. Why did they need the word v'samchu? It's extra. The answer is to tell me 2 more judges. For Rabbi Shimon says, wait a second, no. Iksiv hachi, if that's what all it said, put your hands on it. Havamina, mai al bisamach. What would on mean? On just means to put it next to. On doesn't necessarily have to be to lean directly on it. On could be or on top of it, right? It doesn't have to be to actually lean on it. So therefore it has to be to lean on it. Rabbi Yehuda says, Gama Rosh. He says, Rosh Me'ula. He says, look, it says that you're supposed to put it on the head. So if you're putting your hands on the head, so then that means that you're actually leaning on it. That's already implied. Rabbi Shimon lo gamar rosh. So he says gamar rosh me'olah, but there's exer shava, right? It has the word rosh here that you're going to put your hands on the head of the animal, and also by an olah, it's very clear by the olah korban that you're supposed to lean on that animal. So therefore, it says the word head over there. I learned from olah over to here, so therefore I know I'm supposed to lean on it. So therefore, the word v'samchu is extra. Rabbi Shimon lo gamar rosh me'olah. Rabbi Shimon says no, you don't need to have. There's no such gzeir shava. Without that gzeir shava, I need the word v'samchu, otherwise I wouldn't know to lean. So therefore, that's the source of their argument, whether the word v'samchu is extra to teach me 2 more judges. According to Rabbi Yehuda, I have that word is extra, therefore I can use it to teach me 5 judges. Whereas according to Rabbi Shimon, it's not extra, therefore I can only learn 3 judges. Tana, we learn smicha. That the next thing is leaning smicha zekinim begimel. So So the next thing in the Mishnah is that we're giving smicha to elders, which is the transference of this smicha that was handed down from Moshe to Yoshua all the way down to all the rabbis of the times of the Gemara and into the Mishnah, that they would transfer this right, the authority to judge and be a mumcha. What do we need mumchim for? So remember, the Mishnah said, if we're going to judge dine knas, we're going to judge cases like gzela, stealing, then all of these kinds of cases where there's a payment that is not just merely a financial adjudication, but it's actually a fine, you need to have judges that are mumchim, they have to have smicha.
Is it the spiritual smicha that rabbis get?
It is the smicha that rabbis get is copied from this smicha. The smicha itself that we have nowadays, the smicha, and we're going to see when we learn through this Gemara, got blocked. Doesn't exist anymore. The Romans were successful in eliminating it permanently. So there's no more smicha. And the Rambam says that he is of the opinion that you could restart smicha. However, in order to do so, you need to have an individual who knows Kol Torah Kulo, knows all of the Torah, and you need to have all of the sages of Yisrael agree. Now, they did, I believe, if I remember my history correct, there was a agreement amongst the Rabbanim of Tzfas to do that to Rabbi Yosef Cairo, and that they gave him smicha, but it is a machlokas, a disagreement whether the Rambam is correct. Machlokas Rishonim whether the Rambam is correct. Rabbi Yosef Cairo himself did not pass it along because of the controversy that it was created. So therefore, even if it was restarted, it got abolished again. And according to many authorities, other Rishonim other than the Rambam, you can never restart it. Once it's lost, it's lost. How are we going to restart it? I don't know. Maybe Eliyahu Navi comes. Maybe he can restart it. Maybe he had smicha and he can restart it. That would be one way to go, right? Maybe we'll see Hashem will, as he started it in the first place and gave it to Moshe Rabbeinu, maybe he can restart it again and give it to Mashiach or whoever else, right?
Who is the last one that had it?
I'm not sure who the last one is. I'm thinking to myself, who's the last one? Well, Rabbi Yosef Cairo, if you hold like the Rambam, but before that, it would have been the later Tanoim. Anybody whose name is Rabbi, as we're going to see in a moment in the Gemara, denotes that they had smicha, right?
Which means that they were subject to like this base din of 3, and that there was some sort of protocol.
That is correct. Yes.
The Mumcha is even more.
Mumche is somebody who had smicha.
No, even more?
No, not necessarily, right? They just had that is the smicha. The smicha sekenim needs 3. So my smicha, what is it? My smicha sekenim. What is smicha and what is the smicha sekenim? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, mismach sabi. So the answer is that what it is it is the laying of the hands in order to transference and make this person into a chacham, into a mumcha. Amar Rabbi Rav Yosef. Rabbi said to Rav Yosef, mismach sabi b'shlosha minalan. Where do we know that we need 3? So Elam, maybe the pasuk says vayismoch es yadav alav. Maybe because the pasuk says Moshe Rabbeinu put his hands on him. Right? That's how Moshe Rabbeinu did it to Yoshua. If that's the case, then you only need one person. Moshe Rabbeinu was one person.
Is it like he was being sworn into being...
It's like that, yes. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu, he could act in the capacity of the Beis Din, because Moshe Rabbeinu was the Sanhedrin before there was a Sanhedrin. So maybe he's acting in the capacity of the Sanhedrin. If that's true, so then you need 71 judges. Where do you get 3 from? So kasha, so we leave that as a question. And in fact, it winds up being a machlokes rishonim, what the nature of the 3 people that you need is. So you see that it comes out, it seems from the Gemara, that we're going to agree that you're going to need 3. The question is whether all 3 have to be machlokes rishonim, whether all 3 have to be sages themselves who have smicha, or could it be one sage who has smicha and 2 other people besides who can be part of the court, right? That you're doing it. But in any event, that's you need 3. Amalei Rav Acha braid Rav Ravashi. So Rav Acha, the son of Rava, said to Rav Ashi, "Biyoda mamish samchin lei." So he says, "Is it really mamish? You have to be able to put your hand onto the person. Is that part of it?" Amar lei samchin lei bishma. So no, what smicha is the process of giving him the title, which is kari lei Rabbi. Right? Once you get the title of Rabbi, it's not necessarily, maybe they didn't practice, put their hands on. That's what it sounds like what Moshe Rabbeinu did to Yeshua. But that's not the critical part of the process. The critical part of the process is the declaration, you are Rebbe now. You're a Rebbe. And now he has permission to judge cases of knas. V'chad lo samich. You're going to tell me that one person couldn't do smicha? V'hamar Rav Yehuda, Hamar Rav, but didn't Rav Yehuda, the name of Rav, tell the following story? Baram, Zachoros ish Tov. Everybody should clearly remember the following person as a good memory. For Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava Shmo, his name was Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. Right, I told you we were going to get back to him. If it was not for him, the Jewish people would have forgotten all of the rules of judging, rules of knas. What do you mean they would have forgotten? Nigrisunhu. They should just read it again. Go open a Gemara. Learn it. Why is it so hard? How can they forget it? So the answer is, Batlu dini kenosos Yisrael. What it would have happened is they would have gotten rid of smicha if it weren't for him, and he was probably one of the last ones himself. And so therefore, if it wasn't for him and his sacrifice, they wouldn't have been able to continue smicha, and there would have been no dini knos. Shepamachas. One time, Gazra Machus Harishah, the evil kingdom. Right? Gazra al Yisrael shekol asomech yahareg. Anybody who gives smicha should get killed. V'chol nismach yahareg. And anybody who receives smicha should get killed.
Is it like a mitzvah to get smicha? And why are their death sentence?
Well, why would they get? Why would they get it? No. The Romans were going to kill them, right? Not that this was not based in who was going to kill them. Romans are going to kill them, right? The ir shesomchin ba techarev, and the city that they would do the smicha in would get destroyed. Utchumin shesomchin bahen yakru, and the boundaries, the tchum is the extended boundaries of the city would get destroyed. So the Romans were very serious about this, right? This way they knew that people would prevent the smicha. Yeah. So Ma'asa, what Ma'asa Yehuda ben Bava, what did he do? Halach v'yashiv lo bein shnei harim gedolim. He went out in the wilderness between two mountains, who bein shtei ayoros gedolos, and he went between two large cities. So he was outside of the cities, so the cities could not get punished. Ubein shnei tchum Shabbos, between two areas where there was a wilderness where there was no tchum Shabbos. Bein Usha lishvaram. Places that he went was between the cities of Usha and Shvaram, v'samach sham, and he gave smicha there, chamisha zekenim, to 5 elders. Ve'eluhein, these were the 5. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua. Right? Some pretty big names. Rav Avia, Mosef, Af, Rabbi Nechemia. Rav Avia added also, Rabbi Nechemia was in that group. Kavan shekiru oivehem bahen. When the Romans found out about it, Amar lehen, B'nai Rutzu, he said, my sons, run. So Amrulo, they said to him, Rebbe, Matei Alecha, what are we going to do about you? He was older, he couldn't run. So what are you going to do? Amar lehen, he said, Hareini mutalif nehem ke'evan she'in lahofchim. He says, I'm like a stone that can't move. Just don't worry about it, go on without me. Amru, they said, Lo zazu misham ad shenatzu bo shlosh mios lun nevios. They speared him with 300 spears shel barzel of metal, v'asuhu kikavra, and they made him like a sieve. So the Romans stabbed him 300 times. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, so that was his sacrifice to continue. The Knasi sacrificed his life in order to be able to continue on the smicha. So the question is, but it was Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava by himself. So how you said you needed 3 people. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava seems to have done this by himself. So how do you resolve that contradiction? So the answer is Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, Achrini havu bahadei. The answer is Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava took some people with him. Why didn't they get counted? Because Mishum quoted Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, because Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava was the senior, so therefore he got credit for the incident. The others must have run away and must have escaped. Whatever, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava got credit for the incident. Very Meir, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava samche. 1 second, Rabbi Meir was given smicha by Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. The Ha'amar Rabba bar Chana, didn't Rabba bar Chana say Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Amar Rabbi Meir lo samchu Rabbi Akiva eno ela toa. If anybody thinks that Rabbi Meir didn't get smicha from Rabbi Akiva, there's already a previous generation, then he's making a mistake. So the answer is Samche Rabbi Akiva v'lo kiblu. You're right. Rabbi Meir did get smicha from Rabbi Akiva. They just didn't accept it. Why? Because Rabbi Meir, Rashi says, Rabbi Meir was very young at the time, which is interesting because Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was given smicha from Rabbi Akiva and he was 18. So I don't know how old Rabbi Meir was, whether he was younger than 18 or whether it was just that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was unusually bright or as a genius. He's the one who got the white beard. That's right. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah also got smicha from Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Meir apparently got smicha, but people didn't accept it. Samche Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava v'kiblu. But when Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava finally gave him smicha, then people accepted it. Amri Rishu ben Levi. Rishu ben Levi says, "Ein smicha bechutz la'aretz." You cannot give smicha outside of Eretz Yisrael. Right? That's one of the things about Eretz Yisrael is it's a transference of the Shechina, Hashem Shechina. So therefore, Hashem Shechina, like we know with prophecy, you can only have it in Eretz Yisrael. This can only be transferred inside of Eretz Yisrael. My ein smicha. What does that mean? There is no smicha. If it means that you don't have any rulings relating to knas outside of Eretz Yisrael, so therefore that's what it means. There's just no smicha. It's inapt. It doesn't apply because you can't have a court to judge these rulings in outside of Eretz Yisrael. Vatnan, we learned in a Mishnah. Not true. Sanhedrin noheges bein ba'aretz bein b'chutzlaretz. You can have a court of 23 judges, whether inside of Eretz Yisrael or outside of Eretz Yisrael. So there's no reason why you couldn't use your smicha outside of Eretz Yisrael. Ela delo samchina b'chutz la'aretz. Rather, what it means is we cannot give smicha outside of Eretz Yisrael. Pshita. So pshita somchim b'chutz la'aretz v'nismachin ba'aretz. So I understand that let's say the person who's giving smicha is outside of Eretz Yisrael, and the person who's receiving smicha is inside of Eretz Yisrael. So then, hamrinan delo, that's for sure not going to work, because the guy who's giving smicha can't be outside of Eretz Yisrael. That's for sure. Ella somchen ba'artz v'nismachin b'chutzartz. What if it was the reverse? What if the person who is giving the smicha is in Eretz Yisrael, and the person who's not giving smicha is outside of Eretz Yisrael? Now, this sounds like, and some Mefarshim, some Rishonim explain this Gemara, they're standing on the border. Right? One guy's inside of Eretz Yisrael, one guy's outside of Eretz Yisrael, leaning over. Rashi says that's not what this Gemara is talking about. This Gemara is just asking the question, does the person who is giving smicha, does the person who's receiving smicha have to be physically present when he's getting smicha? Can you send him a letter and say, I hereby confer smicha upon you? Right? Does he have to be physically present?
I would say no.
So that's the question. So what's the answer? Tashma, come and listen. De Rabbi Yochanan hava mitzarale, de Rav Shimon bar Abba. Rabbi Yochanan was always upset about Rav Shimon bar Abba, de lo hava gabayhu, de lismechai. He never was by him in order to give him smicha. So Rabbi Shimon ben Zirid v'chad imei, Rabbi Shimon ben Zirid, and one person was with him. Umanu, who was that? Rabbi Yonasan ben Achmai. V'amru la, and some people said that Rabbi Yonasan ben Achmai was the one. V'chad imei, one was with him. Umanu, Rabbi Shimon ben Zirid, and who was that? Rabbi Shimon ben Zirid. Again, same question about who was the main one, who was the secondary one. So dehava gabayhu. So they were by Rabbi Yochanan. V'chad delo hava gabayhu, and one was not with him. V'lo samchuhu. And so one of them got smicha, and one of them did not get smicha. So you see from here that if Rabbi Yochanan was upset, he couldn't give smicha. Why didn't he just send a letter? The answer is he had to be physically present. And also these other rabbis, right? He was able to give...
Seeing as credit.
Right, you can't get no distance learning, right? You can't do no remote learning, right? So Rabbi Chanina of Rabbi Yoshaya, hava kamishtakid Rabbi Yochanan le mismechinhu. So lo hava mistayeh milsa. So Rabbi Chanina and Rabbi Yoshaya, so Rabbi Yochanan was going to give smicha to them. He was trying to give them smicha, but he was never able to do it. So Hava Kamitzdayer Tuva, he was very upset about never getting the opportunity to give the smicha. So Amrulay, so they said to him, Lo nitztar mar, you shouldn't get upset about it. I guess he couldn't find any other judges to be able to judge the case with him to be part of it, and he wasn't able to do it. Or maybe the Romans, he was worried about the Romans, but in any event, he wasn't able to do it, and he was always bothered by it. They said, don't worry about it. Da'anami b'deis Eli kasinan. It happens to be, we come from the lineage of Eli. Eli is the story in the Navi, where the Bnei Eli, the children of Eli, were delaying the women from providing their sacrifices after they had given birth. And by doing that, the women were not returning home to their husbands in time. And Eli was very upset, and the children of the Navi was very upset, and the Eli's children got a curse that they would not grow up they would all die young, all the children of Eli would die young. So therefore he said, we are of the children of Eli, it happens to be. So, Damar of Shmuel bar Nachman says, I'm Rabbi Yonasan and Rabbi Yonasan, Minayin she'ein nismachin lebeis Eli. How do we know nobody in the house of Eli will ever get smicha? Right? And that's potentially why Rabbi Yochanan was never able to do it. Don't worry, it's not your fault. It's our fault. We're from the children of Eli. We're not going to get smicha. Shnamar, as it says, Lo yiyeh zaken bebeischa kol yamim. There will not be an old person in your house all the days. Now, he says, my zaken, what does it mean by a zaken? Does a zaken mean an old person? Ilim a zaken mamash, if it means really an old person, v'aksiv, the pasuk says, kol marbis beisecha yamusu anashim. Anybody in your house will die before they become men. Ella, so therefore, if it means they're going to die before they become men, obviously they're going to die before they're old. So then that's already means they're going to die young. So what does it mean when the pasuk says they won't become zakenim? Ella smicha. It means to say that they also will never get smicha. And we know.
It could be that they have an internal sickness or whatever that makes them die young.
But it's a curse, right? It's a curse. Abaye is famously from the children of Eli himself, and he did what he would explain is that if you are in Torah and do Chesed and Ma'asim Tovim, it can prevent the curse from hitting you and you can live for longer. However, the curse of dying young could be prevented through that, but not the smicha part, obviously, right? And Abaye didn't himself get smicha because he was in a Mora later on, but right, because that was gone by then. There's no, right? That's why he's Abaye, not Rebbe Abaye, right? But Rabbi Zera hava mitmar lemis mechai. Rabbi Zera was hiding. He was trying his best not to get smicha. So he was hiding, right? Da'amar Rabbi Elazar said, Liolam havi kabel v'kayim. Right? What he said is, you should always live in the dark, in the shadows, and that's how you live. Stay out of the limelight, right? That's how you get into trouble when you start getting into the limelight. Came into Sham'a lahad Amar Rabbi Elazar. Then he heard another teaching of Rabbi Elazar, and the other teaching of Rabbi Elazar was Ein Adam Ola Ligdola Elim Kain Mochlin Lo Al Kol Vanasaf. A person doesn't get elevated to a position of authority unless all of his averos are forgiven. So then, when he heard that, Tzilei Anafshe. So he says, then he made himself presentable. He was going to seek out smicha, right? Because now he wanted to get all of his sins forgiven. So we had that Aviv had asked the question, why would a person want to become a judge, right? This is an example of somebody who wanted to become a judge for that reason. Ki samchua le Rabbi Zera. When they gave Rabbi Zera smicha, sharu lehachi, they sang the following to him: Lo kachav v'lo srak v'lo pirchos. These are all types of makeup. All the types of makeup that they give to a bride in order to beautify her. Even you, Rabbi Zera, without all of those things. V'yalas chen, you provide grace without any of those things. You're clearly wonderful without it. Ki samchu le Rabbi Yami, when they presented smicha to Rabbi Yami, the Rabbi Yasi, and to Rabbi Yasi, sharu lehachi, they sang the following: Kol man din, kol man din. Anybody who is like this should become a judge. Anybody who's like this should become a judge. Smuchu lana lo tismechu lana. So he says, these are the kinds of people who should get smicha, but you should not provide smicha to people who are lo misarmitin velo misarmisin, from people who are who turn the rules around, or people who don't give any rational explanations for the words that they say. Some say it was machsimin, people who are people who hold back from giving it the reasons for things in Torah, or velomi tormisin, and not lo from tormisin. Now Rashi says lo is parish. Lo is parish. I read this Rashi. I thought it meant ones that do not explain themselves, right? Because that would be an example of a person you wouldn't want as a judge. But
Tormisen is
I don't know what it means, right? But Rashi says people who don't explain. So then I saw Rabbi Rosner. He was saying that Rashi was saying, I don't know what it means. So I'm not sure whether Rashi's saying, I don't know what it means, or Rashi's saying somebody who does not explain what it means. So either way, that's what these are bad qualities for judges. Rabbi Avo ki hava asi mimisivta lebe kesar. When Rabbi Avo would come to when he would go from the yeshiva over to the Caesar's house, right? Because sometimes they had to do government actions. Nafki matronisa debe kesar, the noblewomen from the Caesar's house would come out, and they would sing to him. Rabba da'ameh, leader of your nation. Midbarna de'umse butzina dinahora brich mesyach lishlam. So they would sing to him that the one the madbarana de'umase, the one who leads his nation, who is the butzina dinahora, the lit candle, the flame that guides the way. Brich masyach lishlam. You are blessed as you're coming in peace. So he was a well-respected person in the court. Next, we have Arifas Eglo B'Shlosha. The next thing that we have to worry about in the Mishnah is that we have to break the neck of the calf if there's a murder that takes place and we don't know who the murderer is between two cities. So we need 3. Totana Rabbanan, V'yatzu Zekinecha V'Shovtecha. This is the pasuk that it comes from, that the elders and your that they should go out, and your judges to measure. So it says Zekinecha Shnayim, your elders represents 2. Shovtecha Shnayim, that represents 2 more. Vein based on Shakel, Mosifin Lenod Echad. You can't have equal, so you're going to add 1 more. Harikan Chamisha, that makes 5. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. You need 5 judges for this. Rabbi Shimon says Zekinecha Shnayim, your elders is 2. Vein based on Shakel, Mosifin Lenod Echad. You can't have even. You're going to add 1 more. Harikan Shosha, that makes 3. So again, we have the same kind of machlok as we had before. Rabbi Shimon, Hai Shovtecha Mayavidle. So what does Rabbi Shimon do with this extra word of Shovtecha? If it's not to teach me 2 more judges. So the answer is Hahumi Baile Lemi Yuchadin Shebe Shovtecha, to tell me that they have to be the most outstanding of your judges, meaning that they have to be from members of the Sanhedrin, right? So therefore, they have to be members of the Sanhedrin. It can't be any 2 judges, be 3 members of the Sanhedrin. Rabbi Yehuda Miziknei Zekenecha Nafka, and Rabbi Yehuda says that it says that's from the fact that the pasuk says not ziknei, right? It's zikenecha, your elders. So that indicates. Is that Gzir Shava?
That's what the news is.
No, that's just the ziknei. The extra word ziknei, zikenecha.
So he says like this. He says the world of Atzilus, the world of Ria.
It says Shahariyocha. It could have said V'yetzu ziknei shovtecha, the elders of your judges. And instead it says ziknecha, your judges. So therefore you're going to learn both things from it. Extra words. It has to be both from the Sanhedrin Gedola, the update Sanhedrin, and also to add 2 more judges. So you're going to get a total of 5. For Rabbi Shimon says im ziknei hava amina ziknei hashuk. If you had only written ziknei, right? So then ziknei would have implied 2 more judges, but ziknei wouldn't have been sufficient to tell me from the Sanhedrin. Ziknei only means that it could be regular rabbis from the marketplace. Kasav Rachmana Zikinecha. The reason why the Torah says your elders is therefore the reason it says that. The pasuk says Zikinecha, Viksiv Zikinecha, and if the pasuk had only written Zikinecha, Havamina Sanhedrin Ketana, then I would have thought any Sanhedrin would do, any members of the Sanhedrin of 23. So therefore, Kasav Rachmana Vishovtecha. So he says, I need all of those phrases. I need Ziknei, then I need Zikinecha, and I need Vishovtecha in order to tell me two that are from the Sanhedrin. So Mim Yuchad and Shebishovtecha, the best ones of your judges. So Rabbi Yehuda says, no, Ziknei, Gemar Ziknei, Ziknei. He says, we're going to learn Gzeir Shava. The word ziknei and ziknei appears twice. So the word ziknei by itself would indicate that they would be from the Sanhedrin, and therefore zikinecha tells me two more. How do I know that ziknei? The word ziknei means from the Sanhedrin. Mi v'samchu ziknei ha'edas yadehem. So it says that the ziknei ha'eda are going to put. This is talking about the par halam davar that we just talked about. This bull. We know that that has to be leaned upon by the members of the Sanhedrin. So just like over there has to be a member of the Sanhedrin, so to over here has to be members of the Sanhedrin. So malam yuchadim shbeidav kan yuchadim ziknecha. So ila yolif leilif kula mihasam. Well, now if you're going to have Gzeir Shava, if that's true, there's Gzeir Shava, then why did you need the other psukim to tell me I needed 5? I could have learned the entire. Remember, that's Rabbi Yehuda had the same thing. He said I need 5 judges in order to do the par halam davar. Why did I need any of this? So therefore, zikinecha v'shovtecha lamali. Why do I need the psukim of zikinecha and shovtecha at all? I'd already learned that they have to be from the Sanhedrin. I need to know 5. Ella. So you're right. There's no gzira shava. So rather vav v'shovtecha leminyana. Rather, what it is, you're right. Ziknecha tells me they have to be from the Sanhedrin. Ziknei would not be enough. Ziknei would mean that they have to be elders. Then Ziknecha means they have to be from the Sanhedrin Gedola. And so where do I get the other 2 judges then? From the extra vav before Shovtecha. Shovtecha means 2 judges. Vishovtecha and means to multiply it by 2. So therefore, it's 2 times 2 judges. Leminyana. So for Rabbi Shimon, vav lo darish. And Rabbi Shimon says that vav is not extra. It's not really. It's just the grammar of the pasuk. So therefore, he just leaves that alone and says it's 3 judges.
So just like an add-on.
That's correct. Elameyatz, if that's true, v'yatzu shnayim. Well, if every time you have a plural in the pasuk, right, whether according to Rabbi Shimon or Rabbi Yehuda, you're going to add on 2 more judges. Look how many times there are plurals in this pasuk. V'yatzu, and they went out. That's shnayim. Umadadu, and they measured. That's shnayim. That's another 2. So Rabbi Yehuda, hare tisha. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you're up to 9 judges. Rabbi Shimon, shiva, and according to Rabbi Shimon, you're up to 7 judges. Why do they not learn all those plurals to tell me that you need 2 more judges? So the answer is, those words are necessary, as we learned in a brisa. V'yatzu, when it says v'yatzu, hein v'lo shluchan, that's to tell me not 2 more judges, but rather that the Beis Din themselves, the Sanhedrin have to go out themselves. They cannot send a messenger of the Beis Din to do it. Cannot be a messenger. They have to go out. Umadadu, and then they measure. Shafilu nimtza be'alil le'ir tzarich lasok b'medina. Even if it is clear that the person is much closer to one of the cities than the other one, they still have part of the process is to measure, right? It's clear. They're like, what, 100 feet from the city and 1.5 miles from that city. Nevertheless, you go through the process of measuring because that is part of the procedure. The Beis Din has to measure. Okay. Or this group. Okay? So Masnis and Deloki Haitana. So now the Mishnah, who gave 2 opinions, 3 judges or 5 judges, is not like this other opinion in this brisa that we're about to mention. The Tanya Winner brisa. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, V'yatzu zekinecha v'shovtecha, that your elders and your judges should go out. Zekinecha, zu Sanhedrin. Zekinecha means the Sanhedrin. Now we're going to see that he's implying, whether we're going to say the Sanhedrin, do we mean members of the Sanhedrin, or maybe even the entire Sanhedrin? V'shovtecha, and your judges, zem melech, v'kohen gadol. Shovtecha refers to not 2 more judges, but rather to the king himself and to the kohen gadol have to show up at this ceremony. So melech tichsiv, but how do we know the word shofet applies to a king? Because the pasuk says the word melech applies to the word melech and shofet are related, because the pasuk says melech b'mishpat yamid aretz, that the king upholds the land with mishpat. So therefore, when you see the word mishpat, it means the melech, and a kohen gadol dichsevu basal kohen haLeviim v'la shofet. You bring the kohen Leviim and to the shofet. So you see, a kohen is also a shofet. So iboilu. So the question like this: Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov bechad poligo b'tardi pol. Is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov arguing with these other opinions in one point, in that the king and the and the Kohen Gadol have to show up? Or is he arguing also about the Melech Kohen Gadol Palig, Rabbi Sanhedrin, Ik Rabbi Yehuda, Ik Rabbi Shimon? But when he says the Sanhedrin has to show up, he really means like Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Shimon, either 3 or 5 of them, like the other 2 opinions said. O Dilma B'Sanhedrin Nami Palig, or is he arguing, and he also argues about that, and he needs to have the entire Sanhedrin of 71 show up. Damar Kula Sanhedrin Ba'inan. Amar Rav Yosef says Toshma Kamalis Matzon a base Pagi. Let's say you have, we're going to talk about a elder who disagrees with the Sanhedrin. He himself decides he's going to rule against the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin votes, he argues against them, and then he ignores them, and he goes and he teaches his way out after the Sanhedrin already ruled. You'd get Misa, right? You get Misa. You'd be Chayav Misa for that. That's correct. You'd be Chayav Misa for that. So now, where does the argument have to take place? So the question that the Mishnah asks is, let's say he finds them a base Pagi. He finds them outside somewhere in base Pagi, not in the chamber where the Sanhedrin normally rules. And he argues with them there. You might think that is a rebellion, and he'd be liable for that. Tamalomar, the pasuk says, "The come to makom," that you get up and you go to the place, meaning that the argument has to take place in the Sanhedrin's chamber. If the argument with the Sanhedrin takes place any place other than where the Sanhedrin is normally located, it doesn't count. Right? It's not an official argument with the Sanhedrin unless you're in the Sanhedrin's chambers, which is in the base of Mikdash. It's the location that causes the argument. So now, in this case, how many people of the Sanhedrin were outside of this, were out there that he met and he bumped into? If it was a less than, let's say it was less than half of the Sanhedrin, then what would be the question? If he's arguing with less than half of the Sanhedrin, how's that a rebellion? Maybe the other guys who aren't here agree with him, in which case he's really in the majority. So therefore, that wouldn't prove anything. Elapshita denafakulu. Clearly what's happening here is the entire Sanhedrin is out here in Beis Pagi, and Beis Pagi, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the section of the area of Yerushalayim in the old city. They kept building more and more walls outside of the original old city in order to expand the location of the old city. So as they were expanding the location of the old city, the Sanhedrin would have to go out there and they would, let's say, for example, they would have to designate these areas as part of Yerushalayim. So they would find these guys out there in this Beis Pagi region. So they all must have been out there. So Lamai, what were all of these members of the Sanhedrin going for a walk for? What, that whole Sanhedrin is out there? Maybe they were just going for a stroll. So Mimatsu Nafki, would they be allowed to leave the Sanhedrin and go for a stroll? The pasuk says no. Sorecha agan hasoar al yechsar hamezek. You're not supposed to leave this chamber, right, empty. So therefore, during the times that during the daytime, the Sanhedrin is supposed to be in session. The Sanhedrin has to have representation, have to have members there. They can't all leave. So elapshita lidvar mitzvah. They must have all left for a valid reason, to do a mitzvah. So heichi dami, what mitzvah could they possibly be leaving the chamber of the Sanhedrin to perform? Lam lemedinas egla. Isn't it that they all went to go measure the distance of this body? And Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, and this must be Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov's opinion, Damar Kuli Sanhedrin Bayin, that they need the entire Sanhedrin out there in order to measure.
Were they allowed to take any breaks though?
I had that question as well. So it seems like the answer is not all at once. Right? They would have had to have taken from this pasuk, based on where we are now. Maybe we'll see some more when we get into this in detail. Yeah. It sounds like they did not all take breaks at once. If somebody took a day off, the rest of them were there. So Amar le Abaye, lo, Abaye says no. Kagon shiyotzu lahosif alayir. There are other things that the Sanhedrin had to take care of. Maybe they went out to go add on to the city of Yerushalayim or add on to the area of the Beis Hamikdash. It's not like we go to Mishnah, in our Mishnah. Ein mosif an alayir, valazars, el bebeistin shel shivim ve'echad. You can't add on to the city without having the Sanhedrin there. Tanya kavasin Rav Yosef, there's a brisa that supports Rav Yosef though. Matzon abeis pagi, he found this the members of the Sanhedrin out in Beis Pagi, the Himra Alein, and he argues with them. Kagon, this price explicitly states, what were they doing out there? Kagon Shiyotzu Libedinas Egla. They went out in order to measure the distance of the calf. Or in order to build to add on to the city, or add on to the base of Migdash. So you might think that would be a valid disagreement. That they would have had to have the argument in the location of the Sanhedrin. That is not going to be a sufficient location. If they have this argument in the outside of the Sanhedrin, it doesn't count. But the point here is that according to this price of Rabbi Yosef, that it could be possible for him to meet the entire Sanhedrin when they're all out measuring for the Egla Rufa, which means that Rabbi Eliezer, according to this opinion, according to this brisa, does indeed hold the entire Sanhedrin needs to go out in order to measure for the Egla Rufa. Okay, it's a place to stop.